Hi, my name is Lauren Malone, and I created Aelux Market Magic. This is a game that is supposed to review rhetorical appeals for students and college-age students. And this walkthrough is just going to show you bits and pieces of the game, and I'm also going to talk about some of the gaming features that I focused on. So just to start out with, I wanted to use Damian Schubert's description of narrative from his article, Many Forms of Game Narrative, where he talks about narrative as the primary means for players' agency. The player makes choices within the game that dramatically affect the outcome of the game's narrative. So in my game, this is going to affect not only where you end up at the end of the game, but also where you are allowed to go within the game itself. So as we continue and start, there's a lot of text. It's pretty exposition heavy at the beginning, going with Tracy Fullerton's reasons for exposition, which are to set up the time and place, the characters especially, and then the problem, which is going to come up, starts on this page and comes up in the context next. So Dakota's job is to go out into the city and find more vendors for the West Aelux market. And her boss gives her his boss gives this person pretty wide berth. Here in a little bit of feedback info to cut into the narrative talk, but here at the beginning, the players are allowed to actually review the appeals. At this point, when they're playing it, they should have a pretty firm understanding of each of the appeals and be able to figure out how people are appealing to their audience. But if they need that little bit of help, they can check and then head right back to the game. So this adds a little bit to the story. You're allowed to take a magical item with you. And Sebastian Dobbs talks about moral choices within the game. And so there's going to be a couple of them, and they start here. So in his book Story Playing, he says, quote, player choices, if they are perceived as having moral value, cannot but be understood as choices within a fictional world, which is why they can be used as a contrast agent to test video games' abilities to give players agency over the narrative they experience. And so while this isn't a Grand Theft Auto level of amorality, I guess you could say, the players are allowed to be a bit naughty within the game. And we'll see how in a little bit it'll come back to this page where you're asked to take only one item. And the first narrative changing choice you make is on the train platform. You can either go with Max, who is a part of the seedy underbelly of Aelux and a part of the black market, or you can go hit up the on the level shopkeepers in one of the different parts of the city. So we're going to stay and talk with Max. And you're going to go find some black market sellers. So going back to Tracy Fullerton's descriptions of narrative, she has a quote that says, quote, there are some game designers who are interested in allowing game action to change the structure of the story so that choices the player makes affect the eventual outcome. There are several ways to accomplish this. The first and simplest is to create a branching storyline. Player choices feed into several possibilities at each juncture of a structure like this, causing predetermined changes to the story. That's what's going to happen here. All right, and so as we go through the story, you meet different people, you talk to them, and at the end of your scene, you pitch the West Aelux market to them. And the students are supposed to infer from what the setting is and the way the conversation you're having with each of your people, which appeal, ethos, pathos, or logos is going to work in terms of getting them to agree to be a vendor, to persuade them. And so each of these, as you can see, they don't have the appeals name next to them. So the critical thinking aspect of this really comes in, and they have to rely on what they know of ethos, pathos, and logos to kind of figure out what Dakota is doing, and what, in this case, Ainsley needs in terms of convincing. So we're going to try it. You'll see what happens when you get something right, but for now, you've got something wrong, and it just keeps going into the game, into the rest of the narrative, I should say. But if you brought your wrist, if you thought about your magical item and you brought the wristwatch, you can use it here. If I had the students, for example, required them to write down which magical item they took, and the kid or the student didn't pick it, then they could just pick this one, and you could keep going. But let's say you picked the magic watch, and you try again. Ta-da! So now you have 1 point of magic points, and it takes you straight to the correct answer, because obviously you're not going to pick the wrong answer again. And now that you've picked the correct answer, you have this 1 point of XP. And you have to keep track of this so that you know for the end of the game, but we'll get there. And so Ryan Rogers talks about motivation in his article, The Motivational Pool of Video Game Feedback, Rules, and Social Interaction, and says, overall, quote, first, feedback should positively impact feelings of competence. And so this was one of the things that people wanted most in terms of my playtesting and the feedback I got. They wanted to know when they had gotten it right, because in both cases, they were, the choices were just continuing with the story, and they had to kind of figure it out. So I made it explicit by changing the wording of the story slightly, and also giving them the point of XP. So that should positively impact their feelings of competence, as Rogers says. So we're going to keep going to visit Diamond, another part of the seedy underbelly of Aelux. And just to show you another one of the moral choices that the player might have to make, we're going to make him mad. So we're going to try and build common ground with a pathos appeal. It doesn't work, and his henchmen start coming after you. So you have 2 choices here. Now remember that we've already used the watch, and the directions at the beginning of the game were to only pick one thing. However, this is what happens when you try and cheat. So you didn't listen to Gallagher. The magic has reacted because you had two magical items in such close proximity. So it freezes you in place, and his goons catch up with you, the end. And so, again, it's just another little fun thing that doesn't necessarily have to do with the appeals, but shows you gives the player some agency to try and be bad, shows the consequences, and moves them farther down towards the end. But we're going to talk a little bit more about feedback. And one of the things about feedback, again, according to Rogers, is that games that emphasize feedback, in games that emphasize feedback, the player should feel that they can reach the goals of the game. So hopefully through the 2 types of feedback I'm giving, they should be able to continue going with the game. They have the immediate comfort affirmation during the game when they collect the XP, and then they also have feedback at the end of the game in form of reflection. Now this is something that was kind of hard to strike a balance between, because I didn't want the reflective feedback to I didn't want to intrude in the gameplay, I should say, so I wasn't asking questions along the way. But they should be able to figure out, okay, these are, I'm making the right choices based on earning XP. So that was a short game, but hopefully it gives you an idea of how to play, and also the different features that I focused on for this game. So happy playing!